Welcome to DC Insiders, where we bring you sharp views about global issues with relevance to Taiwan from the political capital of the world here in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Wenchi Yu. Amid intensifying US-China rivalry and shifting geopolitical winds across the Indo-Pacific, Taiwan finds itself at a pivotal moment. Once considered a marginal issue in great power relations, Taiwan is now facing unprecedented pressures, from concerns over being sidelined in major US-China dialogues to debates within Washington itself about the future of America's role in Asia. As leaders in Taipei seek new partnerships in Europe, and domestic voices contest the island's economic strategies in alliance with the United States, Taiwan's ability to navigate this complex diplomatic landscape has never been more consequential. In today's episode, we're speaking to Ryan Haas, director of the John L. Thornton China Center of the Brookings Institution. He's also a former National Security Council official during the Obama administration. So welcome, Ryan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Wenchi. It's wonderful to see you.
Well, so you've been a long-time Taiwan observer and worked in the Obama administration, the White House. That's been like 10 years ago. How has the Taiwan issue evolved over the last 10 years?
Well, Wenchi, I think there are some things that are similar and some things that are different. The difference is that 10 years ago, Taiwan was not viewed as a flashpoint as it is today. Now, a lot of people in the United States and elsewhere around the world, they think of the situation in Ukraine, the situation in the Middle East, and the situation in the Taiwan Strait as the three potential flashpoints around the world. That was not a part of the conversation when I worked at the White House. But there are a lot of things that are similar. Peace and stability is still the North Star that guides American policy. There is still an active discussion between Washington and Taipei around asymmetric defense and a lot of other security issues. And a lot of the architecture of the US-Taiwan relationship is unchanged from when it was previously. I think the big difference is that during the Obama administration, President Ma was in power in Taipei, and his focus was on stabilizing and improving relations with Beijing, not with the United States. And in recent years, the DPP, President Tsai and President Lai, have been in office in Taipei. They've put a lot more energy and a lot more emphasis on the US-Taiwan relationship, and it shows.
Well, and also US-China relationship has changed quite dramatically different. And the US-China tensions is not just about Taiwan, it's a lot more other issues. And so how is really Taiwan viewed in this overall US-China sort of equation?
Well, I like to think of Taiwan and the US-Taiwan relationship as operating according to its own logic. But of course, we have to acknowledge that it exists within a larger ecosystem of issues.
Yes.
And there is a real tendency over the past decade towards viewing the US-China relationship as a source of great power competition. And as Taiwan is the issue that is most likely to inflame tensions and potentially lead to conflict. And so Taiwan has taken on a really securitized tone and dimension in the US-China relationship in those discussions over the past decade, for sure.
You mean the tone comes from Washington or the tone comes from Taiwan?
Well, I think it would depend upon who you ask.
Okay.
But I don't think that many people in the United States would like to see tensions increase or rise. I think from Washington's perspective, a lot of that problem is emanating from Beijing and the increasing pressure, the steadily ratcheting up pressure that Beijing is applying upon Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, we have to talk about the most recent Xi and Trump summit. There was a lot of speculation before the summit whether Taiwan issue was going to come up. And interestingly, neither side said Taiwan was even being discussed. Is that an unusual thing? Because usually Taiwan is always discussed.
It is somewhat unusual. Usually Taiwan is mentioned, as you noted. But I think there are a few reasons why Taiwan did not come up. The first is that the meeting was not very long. It was less than 2 hours with consecutive interpretation. Second, the focus of the meeting was on trade and economic issues, not on security issues.
Right, in your experience in the past, China always wants to bring out Taiwan. So this time around, they did not. Was that a compromise on their side, or was it a tacit agreement between two sides? And for what reason? Because they want to reach a deal, or what?
Well, the other 2 points that I was going to mention are that Beijing understood from American officials that the United States did not want Taiwan to be a source of friction between the two leaders when they sat down together. And additionally, China didn't have a lot when it looked at the Trump administration's record on Taiwan since they returned to office to be concerned about, to complain about.
Yeah.
And so I think that there was a judgment not to hit a hornet's nest when there are no hornets in the air, so to speak. And I wouldn't overinterpret this, though, because if President Trump travels to Beijing next April, as he has indicated he plans to do, I fully expect that Taiwan will be a feature of the discussion then.
Okay, so I think that's the question, right? Since Taiwan didn't come up during such an important meeting, does that mean Taiwan is deprioritized? And so if not, will that come up again or not? What is the right way of thinking about, whether Taiwan issue matters between the two countries or not?
Well, I start out from the premise that we should treat as a constant and a given that Beijing cares deeply about Taiwan and is deeply invested and committed to trying to achieve their objective, which is trying to secure control over Taiwan.
要深化两岸交流合作，坚决反对台独分裂行径和外部势力干涉。坚决捍卫国家主权和领土完整。
I don't think that has changed. I don't think it will change. I actually take some comfort in the fact that Taiwan was not raised an issue. It means that there is potentially more space for the United States and Taiwan to do their work of advancing and deepening the US-Taiwan relationship. I do not like Taiwan to be featured as an annex of US-China competition. I don't like us to look at Taiwan through the lens of US-China competition. The US-Taiwan relationship is robust and deep and mutually beneficial, and my hope is that we will continue to make progress along those lines.
There was a concern that Taiwan's interests would be sacrificed, especially under President Trump, because he's so unconventional.
Right.
And there were some reports in mainstream media that said President Trump canceled some senior officials' visit to the Washington, D.C. from Taiwan because he wanted to reach a deal with China. Again, should Taiwan be worried?
Well, let's just acknowledge the reality that President Trump is unorthodox as American leaders go. He has his own style, his own way of doing business.
Does that mean that there's a fundamental change in terms of the U.S. policy towards Taiwan?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But what I would say is that President Trump is not going to memorize the one China policy. With the 3 communiques, the Taiwan Relations Act, the 6 assurances, that's just not the way that he is going to operate. He's probably not going to put a lot of emphasis on values or the shared interest around democracy. What he is going to do is put pressure on Taiwan in ways that previous leaders have not, around defense spending and around trade issues, around investment in the United States. And that will feel uncomfortable, I think, in Taiwan. But when you step back and look at a macro perspective, at the way that the United States approaches cross-strait issues, my judgment thus far is that President Trump is a pretty status quo leader in the sense that he does not radically want to transform the way that the US-China-Taiwan triangle operates or the nature of cross-strait relations. I think that he wants the status quo to prevail. I do not believe that that he is going to get drawn into questions around sovereignty or things like that. Yeah. His answer is that Taiwan is Taiwan. And I don't think that we should expect much beyond that.
So he wants status quo. He doesn't want to do something new because he clearly also doesn't want a war. I mean, he's been saying that. And he's also said that President Xi told him that China will not do anything on Taiwan during his term. Do you think he wants something from Taiwan as well, from all these things?
Well, if I had to distill President Trump's priorities on Taiwan down to 2 things, it would be to secure more benefits for the American people and to get Taiwan to take greater responsibility for its own defense. I think those are sort of the guiding objectives of the Trump administration as it approaches Taiwan.
Some voices claim that Taiwan now is losing support in the United States. We've seen some articles that come up, while others also call for recalibrating the policy to keep the US-Taiwan partnership even stronger, because there's still a lot of China hawks in Washington, D.C.
Right.
This year, I introduced a bipartisan, bicameral bill to enhance US-Taiwan economic and trade ties. Our partnership with Taiwan is more important than ever.
Is there a significant division that you have observed, even just within let's say, the Republican Party right now,
Yeah.
and the administration in particular?
Yeah. I would answer yes. I think that there is a division. I think there is a debate. I think that there are traditional conservative Republicans who feel very deeply about Taiwan.
And these would be called China hawks.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
People who believe that we have a solemn bond with the people of Taiwan and that we should do everything we can to ensure that Taiwan remains stable,
That's probably most
secure.
Washington, D.C.?
I think that would be a majority of people in Washington,
Okay,
D.C.
all right.
And then there are people who think that we should revisit America's commitments to Taiwan and to Taiwan's security, and that as China's military capacity grows, that it'll be harder and harder for the United States to sustain deterrence, and that we should get ahead of this problem rather than react to it. And so this is a debate. We should acknowledge that it's happening, but we also should keep in mind that it's not new. People have been having this debate for a very long time. It's more visible now than it has been in the past, I think, for a couple of reasons. The first is that President Trump has just simply opened the Overton window of available policy options with his unconventional and unorthodox style. But the second is that there are just many more channels to distribute ideas now than there were in the past. You no longer have to rely upon the op-ed page of the Washington Post or the Foreign Affairs Journal to get your argument across. You can use podcasts, videos, just about anything. To share your message in ways that ricochet and reverberate, including inside Taiwan. But what I would say about this, Wenchi, is that while all of these discussions are happening, my sense is that President Trump views Taiwan policy as his own personal responsibility. In other words, this is not an issue that he is outsourcing and delegating to junior members of his staff. This is something that he pays personal attention to and careful attention to.
Do you have any evidence to sort of support why you think so?
I think that it's clear if you look at the manner in which he's approached the Taiwan issue and the delicacy around the decisions that have been made to be consistent with the president's priorities and preferences, that you can begin to see this fact pattern emerge. But the broader point is that if you accept that President Trump is a status quo leader, and if you accept that he is keeping a watchful eye upon issues in the Taiwan Strait, then I think where that leads us is that despite the debates that are taking place in Washington, I expect that the U.S. approach to cross-strait issues will actually be fairly steady for the coming period of time.
Now let's take a quick break. You're watching DC Insiders on Taiwan Plus. We will be back in a moment.
Is there a place you've been searching for?
We bring you stories, not just to Taiwan,
exploring the issues that matter to you.
This is a journey that will move you. Our stories are all connected. Taiwan Plus.
Welcome back to DC Insiders. Today we're talking to Ryan Haas of the Brookings Institution about Taiwan's balancing acts in the uncertain world. Japan has always been a very important actor as well in East Asia. The new Prime Minister, she recently said that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could constitute a survival-threatening situation for Japan, so it would require the use of force as it qualifies as an existential threat. Are we going to see more tensions in East Asia?
Well, it's certainly a possibility. The Chinese response has been extraordinarily shrill. The things that they've said about the new prime minister, I think, are pretty extreme. And I think
is it going to be worse than Prime Minister Abe? Okay.
Potentially. And I think there are a few issues at play here. The first is that China's near-term priority is to try to push other countries out from involvement in cross-strait issues. They want to try to limit external interference, to use their word, in cross-strait affairs. Secondly, anti-Japanese sentiment is always near the surface inside China. And so this is a easily inflamed issue. But I would also add that Chinese officials have a habit of reacting very sharply to strong female leaders. I saw this with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and I think we're watching this play out with the Japanese Prime Minister as well. Ultimately, where I come out on this to try to answer your question is that China has the ability to control sentiment pretty well inside China. And if they decide to dial up anti-Japanese sentiment, it'll be a choice that they make, not some foregone conclusion.
And so that would be something that the government in some way can manipulate in terms of public sentiment.
I think that they are capable of turning it up or turning it down, depending upon whether they choose to do so.
But probably not to the extent that there's actually going to be a physical conflict between China and Japan. Do you see that coming?
No,
Okay.
I think it would be net negative for both sides. I think it would be a tragic outcome for the world. I actually don't think that the Chinese leadership should be surprised by what the Prime Minister said, the Japanese Prime Minister. They have to plan against the expectation and assumption that Japan would involve itself if there was a cross-strait conflict. It would be irresponsible for them not to do so.
Now, another really interesting, I would say, factor is that as Taiwanese leaders recognize how President Trump is an unconventional leader, so they've, in my view, put more emphasis and energy in Europe. So we've seen recently Vice President Bi Kim-cheo's visit and almost it's unprecedented speech to the European Parliament, and former President Tsai's visit to Berlin.
Being here in Brussels, let me begin by speaking about Taiwan and Europe. We may differ in culture and history, but our partnership is rooted in common ground that runs deep. We are pluralistic societies that value open discourse, accountable governance, fair elections, and freedom of belief and expression. And yet, Taiwan has always sought to be a force for good in the world. And we are grateful to all of you for your continuing support. We don't just want to survive, we want democracies to thrive. We're not just defending what we have, but building what we want the future to look like, where free people and societies are more connected, more united, and more capable, and of course, stronger together. Taiwan is ready to work with all of you. Together, we can ensure that freedom not only endures, but prevails.
Taiwan made its own effort to join the democratic world, but our road to democracy was also not easy. It was preceded by decades of authoritarian rule. In Europe, as in Asia, the authoritarian toolkit is very similar. Much of the destabilizing tactics Taiwan has faced in recent years tend to find their way to Europe eventually. We have seen this in the form of cognitive warfare and information manipulation, which are hard to identify and counter, but have long-lasting harmful consequences for democratic societies. I hope Berlin Freedom Week sets us on the course to build a stronger and more unified international democratic community. Taiwan and all those that share our values have a key role to play in ensuring that democracy prevails. While it may seem like we are faced with unprecedented challenges, I'm confident that by working together, we will create a bright future for free societies.
What are your thoughts about those visits?
Well, I think they're very noteworthy, and we should pay careful attention to them. But I'm not necessarily, at least not yet, of the view that this is a response to President Trump. I think that Taiwan's outreach to Europe preceded President Trump's return to office. I think it will outlast President Trump's tenure in office. I think it is a feature of Taiwan's efforts to search for friends wherever they are and to try to consolidate and strengthen those relationships.
But you probably notice whenever they visit Europe, right, the speeches they give always focus on the values of democracy, whereas with this administration, there's probably less emphasis of those values these days.
Yeah, I think the US-Taiwan relationship is moving towards a interest-driven relationship, whereas Taiwan's relationship with Europe is still very much grounded in shared values.
Since you mentioned interest-driven, now one of the key issues that still keep people guessing is the trade and tariffs issues.
美方希望提升本土制造能力来 符合它一定程度的一个本土的需求啊。那我方呢，支持高科技产业在国际扩展，那我们也可以来协助我国企业在美国进行有力的国际布局。那以我方的制造优势的能力结合美方的研发创新人才市场的优势共同来发展台美高科技战略伙伴关系。那共同来巩固双方在全球的高科技的一个领导的地位，那借以来深化台美的经贸关系。那这是一个比较战略层面的思考。那因此从这样的一个战略层面的思考之下呢，面对美方的一个期待，那我方有再三说明我们的立场我们所主张的一个扩大投资美国的模式，是以产业投资规划搭配政府支持措施包括金融信保、台美合作共同开发产业聚落，并且向美方争取有利的投资环境及条件。那这个是我们历经多次跟我们国内高科技产业沟通之后，我们所提出来的台湾模式这个跟日韩模式跟欧盟模式是不同的。
There doesn't seem to be a resolved trade tariff that's finalized between US and Taiwan. Do you know what's going on?
My sense is that the negotiators are fairly close, but there's a desire to have a comprehensive understanding around trade going forward rather than reaching an agreement and being surprised by some other related issues such as 232 tariffs on semiconductors. And so I think that there's a desire to get a comprehensive understanding of how things are going to move forward before the trade deal is finalized.
So you think the 232 semiconductors could be one of the key issues between the two countries?
I think it's related to
that, because that one hasn't been announced either, right? Okay. As you know, because of those trade issues and tariffs issues, a lot of Taiwanese people kind of don't know how to feel about America right now, and there's growing skepticism about the US. Of course, the current ruling party, the DPP, has always aligned itself more closely with the United States rather than Beijing.
Right.
That KMT is more interesting aligning themselves with. So do you think this poses any political risk to the current ruling party, the DPP?
My expectation, Wenchi, is that the DPP will be evaluated ultimately on how well they do in building external relationships to strengthen Taiwan's position in the world and its ability to defend itself against pressure, coercion, and heaven forbid, conflict from
But the
China.
US is a big part of it.
The United States is a huge part of it, but it is not the only part of it. And so what I think that we're talking about is a process that not just Taiwan, but also South Korea, Singapore, India, and many other countries around the world are undergoing as well, to find new partnerships, new arrangements of countries to serve as a bulwark and sort of strengthening exercise to defend against uncertainty with the United States. So part of this relates to the United States, but ultimately my expectation is that the DPP will be evaluated based upon how effectively they are able to build relationships in Europe, with other powers in Asia and elsewhere.
Is the US still a reliable partner?
Well, as an American who cares a lot about Taiwan, I certainly hope that that proves to be the case. I believe that there really is no alternative to the United States for Taiwan, for allies and partners of the United States around the world. The world is certainly undergoing a transition right now, but the United States is still an indispensable actor that cannot be ignored, for good or ill.
Do you foresee any black swan moments in the next few years?
Well, we can't rule it out or eliminate it as a possibility. I don't think that's the plan, though. I don't think that Beijing is right now focused on trying to inflame tensions in the Taiwan Strait beyond manageable levels. I also don't think the Trump administration is interested in radically transforming cross-strait issues. And so, with President Lai coming up for re-election in 2028, I don't expect that he will see it as politically advantageous for himself either to see cross-strait tensions escalate. So it is a possibility, but I don't think it's the plan for any of the three major actors involved in cross-strait issues.
But what about domestic factors? The new KMT chair, do you think she's going to throw in any uncertainty or? Would it go anywhere?
Well, I think that she will change the nature of the conversation around cross-state issues. I think she already has. The fact that President Xi has reached out to her and she has responded, I think it'll be worth watching whether they decide to meet in the future.
And is that in the U.S. interest? Should the U.S. welcome those conversations?
I think the U.S. interest ultimately is in peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait, and so it's a question of whether or not having more interaction across the Taiwan Strait is conducive to that or not. Honest people can come to different conclusions on that, but my preference would be to see clarity on all sides to shrink space for miscalculation.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Always, I mean, you're such a shrewd observer on Taiwan issues, so really appreciate.
Well, thanks for the
sharing.
opportunity to speak with you, Wenchi.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching DC Insiders. Please follow us on social media to get the latest episode. See you next time.
How does Taiwan stay on the forefront of innovation in a world of uncertain tariffs, wars, and shifting geopolitics? Get answers and more from award-winning programs to exclusive Mandarin dramas. Download the Taiwan Plus app to any device today. No ads, no bias, just facts. Taiwan Plus.